There is a moment, suspended between intention and action, when the hand hovers above something beautiful and the mind understands with absolute clarity that what is about to happen cannot be undone. This is that moment. The workspace exists outside of ordinary time. It is a place defined not by walls or dimensions, but by the quality of its light, a soft, sourceless luminescence that seems to emanate from the glass cutting board itself, a wide luminous plane suspended in the ambient glow, like a frozen lake caught at the precise instant before dawn touches its surface. The surrounding darkness is not empty, but expectant, the way a concert hall holds its breath before the first note breaks the silence. And arranged upon and around this glowing stage, like performers awaiting their cue, sits a collection of crystal glass fruits so exquisitely crafted that the eye struggles to accept them as objects rather than phenomena. The ruby red apple commands attention first. Its translucence is not the simple transparency of window glass, but something far more complex. A deep, wine-dark red that shifts toward amber at its thinnest edges, where the glass tapers to near invisibility and deepens to the color of garnets at its core. Light does not merely pass through this apple, it is transformed by it, bent and scattered into prismatic ribbons that drift across the cutting board like slow-moving aurora. The surface carries the ghost of a real apple's texture, faint dimples, the subtle topography of something that once grew toward sunlight, rendered in glass with a reverence that borders on devotion. Beside it, the grape cluster rests in deep violet shadow, each individual sphere, a perfect orb containing its own frozen universe. Tiny air bubbles are suspended within each grape, caught mid-ascent through the molten glass at the moment of the artisan's choosing, transformed from transient imperfections into permanent constellations. The cluster breathes with a kind of impossible stillness. The golden citrine lemon glows with warm self-sufficiency, its textured rind rendered in extraordinary detail, every pore, every oil-bearing dimple, faithfully reproduced in glass that catches photons and holds them briefly before releasing them as something warmer, something that carries the memory of Mediterranean afternoons. And finally, the pale jade pear stands slightly apart from the others, its color the precise green of shallow ocean water over white sand, its delicate stem a spiral of twisted silver glass that catches the ambient light and throws it back in thin, bright lines. The pear is the largest of the four, and there is something architectural about it, something that suggests interior complexity, as though its creator understood that the most interesting structures reveal themselves only under examination. The observer's hand, calm, unhurried, belonging to no particular person, and therefore to everyone, reaches for the crystal apple first. The weight of it is a revelation. Glass fruit carries a density that real fruit never possesses, a solidity that communicates permanence, the sense of holding something that has already outlasted everything soft and perishable in the world. The surface is cool against the palm, and that coolness travels upward through the hand and into the wrist with a faint, pleasant shock, the way cold water feels when it first touches overheated skin. The apple is placed upon the luminous board with deliberate gentleness, and the contact produces exactly what was anticipated, and yet somehow still manages to astonish. A single, pure tone, a tink of such crystalline clarity that it seems to reorganize the air around it, rippling outward the way a struck tuning fork sends invisible waves through everything it touches. The sound lingers longer than physics should allow, fading not into silence, but into a frequency below hearing, felt rather than perceived, a vibration that settles into the sternum and remains there like a held breath. The glass blade descends. In the meditative slowness of this space, the cutting is not a swift act, but a ceremony. Each millimeter of the blade's progress through the apple's curved surface demanding full attention. There is a whisper of resistance at first contact, the blade meeting the apple's surface tension, that outermost boundary where glass meets air, and then a sudden, decisive yielding, a release that sends the first cascade of crystalline fragments scattering across the luminous board. They scatter like frozen fireworks, like the aftermath of something spectacular, each shard catching the ambient light and converting it into something personal, something specific to its particular angle and thickness and the unique geometry of its fracture. The interior of the apple is a revelation of geometric complexity. Where a real apple would reveal white flesh and seeds, the crystal apple offers facets, dozens of light-catching planes arranged around a central core that resembles nothing so much as a frozen star, a crystalline formation of such precise symmetry that it seems designed rather than discovered. Each slice of the blade reveals new facets, new arrangements of light, and the growing collection of apple fragments on the board begins to form a mosaic, a luminous puzzle whose completed image is not a picture, but a feeling, the feeling of careful attention paid to something beautiful. The lemon arrives next, and it announces itself differently. Where the apple spoke in clear bell-like tones, the lemon's textured rind produces a softer, more complex sound profile, a shish of blade navigating the dimpled surface, followed by a chorus of tiny tinkling fragments, each one pitched slightly differently depending on its size and the angle of its departure from the whole. The sound is a small orchestra, brief and complete. The golden interior, once exposed, reveals honeycomb-like crystal chambers arranged in radiating segments, and as the blade passes through them, each chamber fractures the ambient light in its own particular way, releasing warm amber rays that spread across the workspace like slow sunrise. The cutting board becomes warmer in its glow, the accumulated fragments of apple and lemon together, creating a landscape of mixed light, cool, prismatic ribbons from the apple, warm amber pools from the lemon, that shifts and changes as new pieces are added. The rhythm of the cutting becomes meditative, hypnotic. Each slice is deliberate, each placement of the blade a considered choice, and the prose of this experience slows to match that rhythm, dwelling in the cool weight of the glass in the observer's hand, the faint vibration that travels up the blade after each cut and dissipates somewhere in the wrist, the growing mosaic of crystal shards accumulating on the board like a luminous stained glass puzzle assembled in reverse, not built toward a picture, but dismantled toward one. The grape cluster is the most complex and most rewarding of the session. Each individual sphere must first be separated from its neighbors, a process that produces a series of soft, organic sounds as the connecting glass stems yield. And then each sphere must be halved, the blade piercing the surface of each frozen bubble and releasing a rapid succession of delicate pop-tink sounds that accumulate into something resembling music. The tiny constellations of air bubbles within each grape are liberated by the cutting, scattered across the board as individual points of light, and the effect is of a night sky being gently disassembled and rearranged. The experience becomes synesthetic here. In this middle passage, the sounds feel like cool water running over the back of the hand. The visuals hum with a subsonic frequency that the body registers as a kind of resonance, and the meditative trance that has been building since the first tink of the apple deepens with each repetition until the boundary between observer and observed becomes pleasantly uncertain. Time equals sign, 1500 milliseconds. The violet fragments join the growing mosaic, and the board is now a complex landscape of color and light, ruby and gold and deep purple, each piece contributing its particular refraction to the whole, the workspace around the board alive with drifting color. The jade pear is last. It is the largest and most architecturally complex of the four fruits, and it requires the most patience, the most deliberate attention. The blade enters the pear's surface with a sound that is somehow both softer and more resonant than the others, a tone that carries more bass, more weight, more presence. And as the cutting proceeds, the pear reveals its interior secret, concentric rings of varying glass densities, each layer a subtly different shade of green, from the pale jade of the outer skin, deepening through seafoam and sage and forest shadow, toward a core of deep emerald, and each layer, as the blade passes through it, produces a subtly different pitch. The cutting of the pear is a scale, ascending and descending, a melody made of material and light. When it is finished, the observer is still. The cutting board is covered in a symphony of crystal fragments, hundreds of pieces of ruby and gold and violet and jade, each one catching the ambient light and refracting it into the surrounding darkness. The workspace transformed into a constellation of color and sound, now fading into perfect, resonant silence. The darkness around the board is no longer empty, but populated with drifting light, with the afterimages of colors, with the lingering frequencies of tones that have already passed. Beyond hearing, the observer's hand rests still among the crystal pieces, palm down, fingers slightly spread, touching the cool luminous surface and the cool luminous fragments together. The ritual is complete. What remains is not the absence of something, but the presence of everything that careful, intentional attention makes possible. The understanding that beauty is not a property of objects, but a quality of the attention brought to them, that the world's smallest and most luminous details are inexhaustible, and that stillness, true stillness, is not emptiness, but fullness, so complete it requires no movement. The light drifts. The silence holds. Everything is exactly as it should be.